Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Gaming in the Keats, giving you a ninth age battle report. It's round 8 of the Berlin Liga, and today I'm up against Highborn Elves, and this is my first time playing Highborn Elves in the most recent updates of their rules. So, this is the first time playing against things like an initiate and the whole massive flying ancient allies lists. So, yeah, let's see how I do today. So, I have a few changes to my list today. After my previous game against um, two units with divine attacks, two super characters, these were the two vampires on dragons and shrieking horror. Um, I figured, well, if I'm going to make the miser and the courtesan in my list be super expensive, I might as well give them brimstone secretions to prevent divine attacks from coming in. So that's what I've done today, which does mean I have to drop the iron. Oh, what is it? The iron husk on the courtesan, so it brings her back down to resilience 5, and it's like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. So I gave her some kaleidoscopic flesh instead, so now she's like -2 base to shoot at. But I don't know. Let's see if I missed the iron husk or not. I brought in some succubi today with chilling yawn. And then I have the 20 myrmidons with piercing spike. I was playing around with this core setup so much just to try and get um, like 100 or 1125 or as close as possible. So this was like the perfect combination of succubi and myrmidons with their different manifestations that can get me to, just with 2 units, keep in mind, that can get me to 1128. So it was the chilling yawn, the piercing spike that did it. Um, we have 6 Cloud Fiends with Unhinging Jaw, which I'm trying that build out again. And now I brought in the 2 Threshing Engines back. I remember using them in the orcs against my orcs and goblins opponent. However, I really wanted to try out Divining Snout and to be able to see like what that sort of does and how that affects my opponent's movement, to know that any character they might have or any unit they might have has the potential charge range of these chariots have the potential charge range of like 24 inches, which is just insane. It's so good. I think if I'm calculating that correctly, because they're advanced 10, the max charge they can get is so 10 plus 12, so that's 22, and then with Divining Snout, that gives them +2 advance against any sort of magical item. So yeah, that's 24. So, yeah, that's just nuts. And then I gave one a standard bearer because I had 10 points to spare, and because they're colossal stature, that means, oh, I guess you count them as gigantic for the purpose of counting ranks. So, say for example, they are charged or charge a unit with light troops, they're going to be steadfast, if I'm not mistaken, or they count as having a rank. Like, that's how we played it today, but let me know in the comments if that's wrong, because I'm not 100% sure. But I'm pretty sure that's correct at the moment. So if I was to get a charge, for example, it would have been in the flank with a threshing engine. That would be a charge flank and big flank, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll see if that actually happens today. So for my opponent's list, he's brought 5 flying units. Oh my god. Okay. First of all, I do want to note this is the first game I've played of Ninth Age where it was completely in German. So I had a lot of fun doing that, but it also made things like it was a great learning experience. But it definitely Yeah, you have to. It definitely was an extra mental workout in trying to remember how to say things. For example, I think my favorite word I learned was Widerstand for resilience. So that's my favorite so far, just because the miser is Widerstand 7. Anyway, so we got the highborn prince on the ancient dragon with the crown of the wizard king and queen's cavalier, just with a great weapon. So no magic item there and no magic resistance. So that guy's looking immediately juicy for some magic spells damage. We also have the standard, I think he's pretty standard, the high prince on a griffin with Demon's Bane, so all of my units have basically -2 AP against him. And sure enough, he's got a Nova Flare, so he's got Divine Attacks and Flaming, and he's like he has the double charge rule. Yeah, it sucks. Now he has so this guy has like a 2-up, 4-up, and he has a Lucky Charm. So I honestly don't know how to deal with this guy with my list, because, I mean, I can try and snipe him, but he still has a 4-up Aegis, like, with that 2-up armor. So, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, he's an issue. He's just an issue for my list. Aside from the big greater demons, even though I do have Brimstone Secretions, like, this model still pumps out a fair amount of attacks that are fairly accurate with lightning reflexes, and their high strength and high AP, so it's just like, I think this guy still kicks my butt. Then we have the mage on divination, so that really sucks for me. 3 units of highborn lancers. 3 units of highborn lancers. 1 unit, let's see. Oh, and then 2 units of 5 Elaine Reavers with champions. I like this here because the champions mean he can charge the Elaine Reavers in with a character and then challenge out with the champion so that the character can go to town on the unit. We've got 10 Ryma Knights, Banner Disciplined. They're going to be owning a flank, I'm sure. We got a Frost Phoenix and then an Initiate. So let's see how we get on with that. Alright, so today it's going to be Counter Thrust on map 8 with Spoils of War. So that's how the settings look like there. Spell selection. So yeah, the Miser chose Whispers, Hasten, Touch of the Reaper, and Spectral Blades. I mean, nothing surprising here, and both his mage and my courtesan took the exact same spells. So that's Know Thy Enemy, Fate's Judgment, Stars Align, and Unerring Strike. His Dragon Prince rolled up on the Wizard, Crown of the Wizard King, and rolled up Pyromancy, so he's got a Fireball, which sucks for me. All my squishy infantry, more so. And then we have an Initiate. He chose Glory of Gold on Alchemy, which I can understand why. And then he also chose Pyroclastic Flow. I was actually happy he chose Glory of Gold here instead of, say, Silver Spike. That would have been... I think that would have... Oh, man. I'm happy. That meant the courtesan would have been a prime target for the Silver Spike, especially since I'm now only Resilience 5 without the Iron Husk. I'm also surprised that my opponent didn't take the Hereditary spell, because that would have mitigated my range damage coming back onto him pretty nicely. But hey, I'm happy about it. He didn't take it, so there you go. Also, my opponent and I had a discussion. I tried to, like, yeah, this might have been maybe a language barrier thing, or just like, I was pretty sure that his list channeled 3 because he has 2 units with Meeting of Minds, so that's the Initiate and the Dragon Prince, and then he has his Mage. However, he was pretty sure his list only channeled 2. I'm not sure if that's correct. I think his list channels 3, but today we played it as 2, and he was pushing for that, so I was like, okay, well, that's fine. But we'll see if it makes any difference again. I think his list channels 3, but also correct me if I'm wrong. I might be wrong. There might be a cap on how many times you can channel with Meeting of Minds. I'm not sure. Okay, so pre-game thoughts. I really want the first turn. Oh my goodness. If I can get first turn, I can dictate where his flyers have to go, and then I can start putting damage on one of his units. Primarily, I'm going to go after that mage. Oh my god, that mage needs to die. And I'm happy that there's no magic resistance on any of his characters, so that really helps me a lot. Because he has 5 flyers in the list, my infantry are really in trouble. I have to be very, very cautious of combo charges. And yeah, like I said, with the mage is priority target number 1, and then I think I can get that the ancient dragon. The griffin is also an issue, but I think that's the hardest of his targets to actually get with my spells. Essentially, I know that I have to let Unerring strike through to stop Fate's Judgment, and then my threshing engines or the chariots, they can zone. I think my plan here is to use them to zone his scoring from moving on to the objectives, and then use them to essentially cover my infantry. So that's the overall plan I have there. So I think I might be able to get the objectives, because aside from the Dragon Princes, his only other scoring are those Silverhelm units, and I feel like I can deal with them rather easily. So yeah, and then having counter thrust as the deployment, like it just giving the 16-inch deployment of, give or take where your opponent deploys their unit. You still have to maintain 20 inches away from that, but it just means that the threshing engines have such a large zoning range. It's just incredible. I think this is, for me, I'm calling this an unstable yellow matchup, because both of us have ways of dealing with our key units. So my opponent, of course, has Divination, he has the Griffin, he has all these potential flyers and combo charges and high mobility. I, of course, also have a massive amount of range damage. I think with the right combat buffs, my scoring can outfight his. And the chariots also have a lot of zoning potential, and so my opponent has to be really careful about where he puts his flyers so I might be able to get like a combo charge with the chariot, and another unit in. So I think it can go either way. It really, I think, is dependent upon the first turn, on who gets it. So speaking of who got it, my opponent gets first turn. Damn it. So it's counter thrust, so my opponent dropped his first unit of Reavers here, trying to zone me from this objective. Actually, excuse me, my opponent dropped him in the center. So he dropped his first unit of Reavers here in the center, so then I dropped my unit of Furies, so then my opponent drops his second unit of Reavers, and so then I drop my second unit of Furies just to be central. I know I don't have first turn, so then I'm just trying to give myself chaffing options wherever I need to, depending on his. Really, it's just trying to chaff the Ryman Knights, honestly. And so then my opponent drops a unit of Silverhelms here, and so I drop my Threshing Engine here to zone this objective, and so from there my opponent drops everything else. So he's got Silverhelms, he's got the Ryman Knights, 2 units of Reavers, his Ancient Dragon, he's got his Mage up front, a scoring unit of Silverhelms in the back there. His Initiate is the red Fiery Phoenix, and then his Frosty is the blue one. And then he's got another unit of Silverhelms, and then he's got his Griffin off to the side being cheeky. So from my left to right, we got my unit of Succubi here. The Succubi are the models with the swords. I actually kind of liked them against the Ryman Knights here because of Chilling Yawn. So it means I get to go Simo, and I have all of these attacks with -1. I'm hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s. So I think I can actually do pretty well against the Ryman Knight battle. depending on magic. And so therefore, to support the succubi as another unit, there's a threshing engine. This is the one without the standard. We have the courtesan just way in the back. Just saying, like, if you want to try and come get the courtesan, you got to come close to me. And that gives me some potential, maybe some potential counter charges. We'll see. We got my clawed fiends right here. We got a threshing engine on the hill. We got my miser staring out, facing this way. And then here's the misers again staring out. And then we have my myrmidons on this side. So I've deployed in a way where he can certainly get out of line of sight of the chariot. But if he wants to do that and try to do that silly rule where you can take a single model and angle them so that I won't have a legal charge on the board edge, I really hope they fix that rule. So I've done it in a way where the miser can actually see past, and if he were to try and do that, I'd have a flank charge on his griffin. So yeah, that's how I've done that here. Let's see what my opponent decides to do on his turn 1. And here's some vanguards, vanguarding the reavers here, vanguarding the reavers here. So I know I'm going to get chaffed. Perhaps I could have placed these units a bit further apart to really make him work for it, but such is life. I didn't. Oh well. All right, opponent's turn 1. So my opponent was able to squeak around. He had the full movement to be able to do this, but he could squeak around without touching DTs and block up my fiends and my courtesan. And then he uses his other unit reavers to block up the threshing engine and the succubi. Right now, this looks like potentially a front, but this is actually a flank. The succubi have a flank on it. I didn't know this at the time. This is, again, goes to... but my opponent attended a flank there, and so it is a flank. And yeah, the griffin decides to come all the way back here, which for me, I'm like, great, do that. Go back. Like, I don't want to deal with the griffin right now. I already have like 4 other flyers coming. My opponent is out of line of sight of my threshing engine with his mage and his dragon. However, the initiate, I think he gave me double 6s on the initiate, and then the phoenix is out of range of the threshing engine. And I think he kept out of range of the threshing engine here. So, threshing engine is doing its job, so I'm happy about that. But here he just pushes up. He knows I'm chaffed, so he can move on to the objective and start grabbing it. He's not quite on the objective here, but yeah, the Ancient Dragon's just kind of covering everything. I know it looks like the Ancient Dragon's nose is in the forest, but it's not. It's just a slight... Yeah, he made sure to not do that, so he didn't have to take a dangerous terrain. With magic, I actually decided to risk a face judgment on the courtesan. I think this is a mistake, but I decided to risk it, and I took a wound for my troubles. I stopped an Erring Strike on the Clawed Fiends, and I was also able to stop Pyroflow on the Clawed Fiends, and then the Fireball failed to wound the Clawed Fiends, and the attribute failed to wound the courtesan. So I get off super lightly here in my turn 1. Demon's turn 1. I do charge the flank of the reavers. So my thinking was, at the time, when I declared it, I was thinking it was a front. And my reasoning was, well, it's possible that I don't kill all of them because I could only get like 1 or 2 models in contact. I mean, granted, it is succubi, so I'd be getting like 8 attacks, hitting on 3s, winning on 3s. But I was thinking perhaps I'd kill just enough so he'd break and then chaff his own unit. But we double checked it and it was actually a flank. So, oops, charge the flank there. So then I bring the Furies over. They do pass their march check because the miser was in 18 of them, luckily. So they come over to chaff the Rymanites. I move this threshing engine up here in a way to threaten his flying units and to threaten this scoring unit. This is a mistake, and you'll see why. Some of you might be able to spot it already, but the dragon cannot see the threshing engine. But this is still a mistake, and you'll see what happens. The fiends charge the reavers. The courtesan comes over here behind the fiends. And basically, my thinking was I'm just within 21 inches of the mage. The miser doesn't need line of sight for the mage's spells and is within 24 of the mage. So my target priority right now is I'm just going to try and blow up this mage. If the dragon wants to come in, I'm fine with that. Because the fiends are kitted out, I think, to deal with the dragon. I'm pretty well. Hitting on 3s, wounding on 5s. Re-rolling those 5s, -2. So I think I can hurt the dragon. I mean, he's going to hurt me back for sure, no doubt. But I think I can put enough wounds so that I can have a counter charge with the miser or the chariot to come into the dragon's flank. Depending on where he puts the dragon. So, yeah, that's my thinking there. The Myrmidons move up. I'm starting to take some board space because my opponent allowed me to have it. I'm not letting any charges, so I'm not within charge range of anything here, so I'm just going to move up. And yeah, say if you want to charge my Myrmidons with the silver helms, I will kill them, most likely. Or at least that's the idea. So, with magic, I got a Fate's Judgment on the mage and did 1 wound. Unfortunately, my opponent made some armor saves, and then my opponent dispelled Unerring Strike on the mage, and then I got a bit greedy. I had 3 dice left. I tried to 1 dice Hasten the Hour on the mage, knowing that demons get essentially the miser gets a +2 to that cast roll, and I figured, well, if I get a 5, then I get the spell off, and I still have 2 dice left for Touch of the Reaper, but I failed to cast the Hasten, and then with 2 dice, with a +2 to this cast, I still fail to get Touch of the Reaper off on the mage. Yeah, that wasn't good. I'm not even sure how I would have failed. It's like you get a +2 to that roll. I needed to have rolled like a 2, a 1, and a 1. Yeah. And then I would have gotten the 2 1s back. I'm not sure exactly how I failed that. With the plus... No, excuse me, that was 3 dice. Pardon me, everyone. So yeah, I failed with 2 dice. I failed to get Touch of the Reaper. Touch of the Reaper off. Oh well. Okay, so here's my opponent capitalizing on my mistake. His 1 silver helm unit could just barely charge past without having to wheel past my Furies, and so he does the charge there, and then he takes the flank charge into my threshing engine. He does pick up the objective though here, so I'm actually kind of okay with that, because it's bringing the objective closer to my succubi and to units that I can deal with it. Everything else just kind of moves how you see it. The flyers are creating this big threat range here. The Knights of Rima don't charge. They're just going to move back and zone. He brings the Griffin over now to deal with the Myrmidons, and the Frosty over as well to potentially do a double charge there. And his mage is like hiding behind these big models here. Yeah, you might be able to see the wings there. So magic, I stop Stars Align on the Lancers, and then a Pyroclastic Flow. You can see it already here. Ooh, actually, yeah, Pyroclastic Flow ended up doing 3 for 5 wounds onto the fiends, which hurt. But in close combat, the Lancers actually only do, I think, 1 or 2 wounds to the engine, I do 2 wounds back onto the unit in the flank in return, and yeah, I fail my steadfast check on an 8, but but I still crumble by 2 somehow. Whatever the math was, I know I crumbled by 2. Yeah, that's how it stood there. So unfortunately, the succubi they're not angled in a way where they can make any good counter charges here. And again, that was my fault when I got rid of the Reavers. I didn't even see these 2 flank charges, so I didn't angle them in a way that was smart. My turn 2. Okay, so I had an option here. I could have charged the Fiends into the dragon. I would have needed a 9. I would have had to take DTs and potentially a breath weapon to the face. And I didn't really like that to be an option. So instead, with a 7, I charged the Lancers here. My intention is to get rid of them, then reform, and take the charge from the dragon. Because now I chaff the dragon princes here, and then I'm still kind of giving up the Fiends, but at least this way, if he wants to get the Fiends, he's going to start taking wounds with them, and then I can have counter charges from the courtesan and ranks from the succubi coming in. So I'm actually liking this, and then hopefully I can get rid of this unit and move the objective to somewhere that's favorable to me. On the other side, I actually moved backwards 2.5 with my Myrmidons because I don't feel like dealing with a double charge from his Griffin and his Frost Phoenix. In the magic phase, I got Whispers of the Veil on the dragon. My opponent stopped Unerring Strike, and then Touch of the Reaper comes in and does 3 wounds onto the dragon. So, okay, things are looking pretty spicy. All right, and then this happens. So, the Fiends kill 4 of the Silver Helms. He does nothing to me. Both units here actually do break due to Whispers of the Veil. My opponent was down by 5, and so both units end up breaking. The Fiends fail their restraint, and they pursue... They pursue 11 inches. At least it gets them out of line of sight of the dragon? I don't know. That's probably not a good... Yeah, that's annoying. And then the threshing engine actually fails to catch the... It fails to catch the... my goodness. The Silver Helms. And rolls low enough where I bump into the Fiends. Now, that's how we played it at the time. However, I've been informed that when you're making a pursuit roll, when you're making a pursuit roll with multiple units of your own, they can treat each other as open terrain. So technically, say I'd rolled high enough, I would have been actually past the Fiends. But because I think the base is so large anyway and I rolled low enough, I just bump right into the back. So now this chariot's facing this way and is giving the flank to the dragon. The succubi, by the way, are not in line of sight of the dragon here. But they're ready for a countercharge in case something happens. And yeah, but this puts me in a really odd position. What also ends up happening, because they break, and because of where the Fiends ended up, I moved the objective 3 inches that way, right on top of the Fiend's path. So I think this might have been a mistake, to be honest, giving the Fiends the objective instead of bringing it towards the succubi, just because there's more health points here. My opponent's going to have to work for them, I think, a lot harder, but I'm figuring, okay, well, at least the Rymanites are chaffed. I can then countercharge the Dragon Princes on the next turn, because I'd rather be charging them than having them charge me. So at the time, I was thinking, like, okay, I think the Fiends can take the objective. All right, so my turn 3. This is just a picture of after combats. Basically the dragon charged the threshing engine, obviously kills it. The Knights of Rima charge the Furies, obviously kill them and reform the face of the Fiends. The Phoenix comes in more central, as well as the Griffin, and the Initiate comes to sit right behind the dragon to countercharge, say, the Succubi that wants to come in. In Magic, my opponent failed Stars Align on the dragon, and also failed to get an Erring Strike on the Fiends, and so that left me able to stop the boosted Pyroclastic Flow on the Fiends, so I'm happy about that. So now my Fiends will be free to charge the Rima Knights. And so that's what they do. Fiends go into the Rima Knights. So here's another dilemma I had. I could have charged the dragon with, say, the Courtesan and the Succubi, right? And so I did this, I calculated this ahead of time, so that would have given me charge, banner, flank, big flank, and 3 ranks. 1, 2, 3, so that's 8. All right, so I have 8. So then, say for example, I just challenge him out with the champion. So if I challenge him out with a champion, we're going to assume he just does max overkill. So that would have been he's losing by 4, so that brings his leadership 10 to a 6 with no reroll. That's pretty good. If I challenge him out with a Courtesan, I don't know how well. I mean, he'll have a breath weapon. He'll have, he has a lot there. I think my fear at the time was that I didn't want the dragon to stick and then just get countercharged by an Initiate, by the Phoenix, by the Griffin, and then losing both the Succubi and the Courtesan. This was my fear, and this is why I didn't do this move. Because if he stuck, because I don't think the Courtesan kills the dragon in 1 round at least, even though he did have 3 wounds, it's just iffy. I do have a magic phase. I don't know. Like, at the time, I was very hesitant to do this move. Looking back at this in hindsight, I think perhaps I should have tried to take it. But even so, I would have been putting the Courtesan out in countercharge range of multiple units, particularly the Griffin. So I chose not to do it. So Succubi take the Lancers instead. The Myrmidons move up to the objective. The Threshing Engine is on top of the hill, moving forward again, just to because I moved it back previously, and so now I'm moving it back forward, just to threaten the Griffin and the potentially even the Phoenix. But yeah, and then Furies are just chilling behind the Myrmidons, making sure they don't give up their points at this rate. So in Magic, this is important. I fail. Know thy enemy up on the Fiends. My opponent stops an Erring Strike on the dragon. So I made the decision to say, I'm just going to put 3. I basically put Hasten the Hour. No, excuse me. No. And so then I tried to do a Fate's Judgment onto his mage here, because the Courtesan can see through and see the mage. And he has 2 wounds remaining. And I rolled a 3 on the Fate's Judgment, and he rolled all 3 armor saves. Crap! No! Damn it. Oh well. So yeah, I think not having one more buff up on the Fiends really hurt me. Because you'll see, next round, the Succubi I chose to overrun, because I didn't want a double charge from the Dragon and the Initiate. So now, I know I'm giving up a flank to the Initiate, and potentially his mage if he wants to come in, but I doubt he will. But But yeah, I didn't want the dragon and the initiate coming into the succubi because there's no way I could really reform out of the dragon's line of sight in a means that was productive. So yeah, but now you notice here, the fiends whiff. I kill one knight, hitting on 4s and with 16 attacks at the moment, and I had 2 hits. So, 2 hits, 1 wound, fails his armor save, yay. And yeah, it ends up being a push because of the wounds he did back to me. So, oh my goodness. Ugh. Gross. Yeah. So I think the fiends are now in some trouble. All right. So he takes the flank charge with the succubi. Makes sense. He brings the griffin over here to kind of zone my 2 bigger demons. The dragon comes over out of line of sight of both my bigger demons and is just looking at these combats, ready to support if need be. His silver helms reform and just try and move away from the myrmidons. And yeah, in magic, I let go unerring strike on the courtesan, but he got no wounds through. I made my Aegis stave with brimstone secretion, so that was good. So we're making saves left and right here on both of our sides. I stopped Fate's Judgment on the courtesan. However, that did allow my opponent to get a glory of gold up on the initiative, making my succubi flammable. So now this is really going to hurt. And yeah, it hurt. Look at that. Good God. So there's 14 left. So yeah, he rolled nuts on his breath weapon. Hit and wounded with everything. I was failing my Aegis saves. And then I think we made a mistake here. My opponent was rolling thunderstomps. So he's rolling a d6, and he rolled I think a 5 this turn. If I remember correctly, I will preface at this point, I was probably 2 drinks in. My opponent was keeping the alcohol flowing. No excuses though. But yeah, I think, actually, my opponent and I were just having an absolute blast and just really just cackling and joking with each other. But yeah, the initiate goes nuts. And I do make my steadfast check, thankfully. But I think this is after crumble here. So, and I fail my reform, also importantly. I think the initiate does take a wound from the succubi as well. So, yeah. And of course, by the way, fiends continue to whiff, and I lose 2 more models to crumble. So, crap. All right, so my turn 4. I bring the chariot off of the hill to try and threaten some of these characters. I'm trying to push him this way. The Myrmidons pick up the objective, and then I charge his silver helms, but they needed a 10 with Swift Stride, and I failed it. Then, yeah, the Miser and the courtesan come over here to look at the dragon and to look at the mage. I think at this point I'd kind of given up on my scoring units, which, again, probably was a mistake. I was so focused on this range damage and trying to get this character. So my opponent in my magic phase stopped unerring strike on the mage. I failed Whispers of the Veil. I believe I put it on the... Yes, I failed Whispers of the Veil on the dragon, but I was able, with a combination of Hasten the Hour and Touch of the Reaper, to do 3 more wounds to the dragon. So now, if he wants to come in, depending on if my units are still there, now he only has 2 wounds left. Okay, so that's good. I will say this. I did have an option with the courtesan to charge the flank of the initiative. So I needed a 7 with Strift Side. Then we measured it. I would have needed a 9 with Swift Stride to overrun into the Dragon Princes. I chose not to take it. I think it was just too much of a risk for me there. I didn't want to fail the 7 and just get countercharged by the Griffin. And I didn't want to fail getting into the Dragon Princes, because I think at this point it would have meant that the Fiends probably die. And if I failed it, then the Dragon Princes get to countercharge my courtesan. And so for me, it was just too big of a risk. The courtesan still only has 1 wound taken, so I figured I'm going to just keep trying to work on the dragon at the moment, because now I've been switching in between the mage and the dragon. The dragon seems to be much more successful in terms of getting wounds on it. And yeah, close combat. Fiends deal with the... Or, excuse me, not fiends. The Knights of Rima deal with the Clawed Fiends. And the initiate... I am able to reform this time. Of course I lose combat. And I reform so I can get as many attacks in on the initiate as possible at this rate, because I'm basically going to lose this unit, but I want to at least try. Alright, so my opponent's turn 5. I don't have the picture of the movement, but the Griffin attempted a 10-inch charge into the Miser. I was a little concerned about that one. I really don't know how that would have gone. I probably would have done nothing to the Griffin. I did have all 3 Veil tokens, I believe, at this point, so that his Lance is AP 0, which is nice. He might have done a wound or 2. I would have been steadfast on a 9. Yeah, I don't know that. I haven't done the math on that combat yet, but luckily he failed the 10, so there you have it. The dragon, however, flies out of line of sight of the courtesan, and with a combination of Unerring Strike, goes through on the courtesan. I stop Fate's Judgment, but then my opponent rolls his breath weapon and does 3... Yeah, so basically he does a wound with or 2... Oh god. Yes, so he does 1 more wound with Unerring and does 3 wounds with the breath weapon. And so now the courtesan only has 1 wound left. Oh, freaking crap. So now he's getting half points for the courtesan. Okay, damn it. And these breath weapons are just... Oh. And this is where I really started missing Iron Husk. Because it doesn't matter if you're -2 to be hit if your opponent is auto-hitting, right? So there you have it. We'll see what I do. Okay, my turn 5. So the courtesan, thankfully, makes her march check and moves. This is as far as I could go with the 18 inches. She moves around the dragon and is able to get here. So I'm basically giving the Rima Knights a 9 on Swift Stride and having them go through the ruins. I mean, that's the best I could do. I couldn't make it any further. I can still see the mage. I can still see the dragon. The Miser moves out of line of sight of the Griffin. I had plenty of movement for that. The Threshing Engine charged the Silverhelms. They flee. He needed a 10 to get off the board, but he needed... and so he rolled just well enough where he got out of charge range from the Myrmidons, but not enough to get off the board. So crap. So they're still on the board. The Threshing Engine fails its charge and moves forward. I position the Myrmidons to counter the incoming charge from the Phoenix. That's probably going to happen. And yeah, the Miser, of course, moves out of line of sight, as you can see, and still within 24 inches of the dragon. So, alright. My opponent lets Unerring Strike through on the dragon. I get 1 wound. I rolled a little low on this one. My opponent then is forced to stop Hasten the Hour. Because that means, yeah, he just takes the wound and he dies. So that allowed me to get Touch of the Reaper off on the dragon. I roll the dice and I get 2 D3, so I get the D3 and I get rolled a 2. So I have a 50-50 chance of killing this dragon, wounding him on a 4. And I get him. I get the dragon. So, dragon's dead. Yay. But boom. The Knights of Rhyma make their charge on a 9, and they lose 2 to DTs for their trouble, but that they don't care. The Phoenix charges the Threshing Engine. In Magic, I let Unerring Strike go through on the Miser, which did nothing. And therefore I stop Know Thy Enemy on the Knights of Rhyma. And boom, the Knights of Rhyma put the last rune on the Courtesan. I only killed 1. I did 3 wounds, and he made 2 Aegis saves, so bummer. So yeah, lost the Courtesan, and the Phoenix does a wound to the engine. I have a banner, he has a charge, I'm steadfast, and I make my check. And so therefore I'm able to, I also make the check to reform in a way where I could move the Threshing Engine down and basically allow my Myrmidons a valid charge. And the Phoenix turns to face the Myrmidons. And so at this rate, I decide to charge the Phoenix with the Myrmidons. I had a dilemma here. I was basically, I feel like I could have done this better, right? Like I could have been in a position where I'm 18 from the Phoenix. Or no, Whispers is 24-inch range. I really could have done this last move better. Like, knowing that my opponent has to stop one of my snipes, and knowing that he's probably going to stop Touch of the Reaper on his mage, I think the correct move here is to just move in a way where I can get a boosted Hasten the Hour off on this unit, and force my opponent to stop the other one, or, have them make the decision to stop. Which snipe do you want to stop here? And still, I guess, attempt a panic check here. Just because he's on the objective. I know he has a 9 rerollable, but at least try. You gotta try, right? So instead what happens, though, I get Whispers of the Veil up on the Phoenix. My opponent lets Hasten through on the mage, so I do 1 more wound. He failed his Aegis save, thankfully. And then stopped, of course, Touch of the Reaper up on the mage. So, with that being said, the Myrmidons kill the Phoenix. The Phoenix didn't do anything to them in return. The Myrmidons went nuts with the battle focus and just, completely wiped it. And I guess since it's the end of my turn, the Phoenix does not rebirth. That's how we played it. To be honest, I don't know. But that's how we chose to play it at that point. So I think that's correct. If not, let me know. And that is the end of the game. There you have it. It is 11-9 victory to my opponent, the Highborn Elves, with a tied objective. I cannot preface how much fun I had during this game. I was just had an absolute blast playing against my opponent. We were just cackling, like I said, and just making jokes and having fun. Even when things were getting tense in terms of the number of rolls on the breath weapon against the Courtesan, and it was just so much fun. And I was also really happy and proud of myself to be able to get through an entire game of Ninth Age in German, completely in German. So yay! It was a great time. And in terms of units lost, I lost the Courtesan, I lost the Succubi, the Cloud Fiends, the Engine without the Standard, and 1 unit of Furies. My opponent lost his Ancient Dragon, which was his general, the 2 units of Silverhelms, 2 units of Reavers, and the Frost Phoenix. So it actually made this a really close match. Hence the 11-9 victory. Alright, so my afterthoughts on this match. Not going first, I was really bummed about that. that's sort of a 50-50 chance. So you can't rely on it. But had I gone first, I think this could have been a very, 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 very different game, potentially. I really wasn't sure how to deploy to counter the flyers and the ability for my opponent to push me the first turn. So I actually thought it would have been useful to deploy as far back as possible to bring the flyers close, because he has the mobility to do this anyway. But I figured this gives me the option of who I want to target for my spells. And also because I also have units that project a long charge range, he still has to be incredibly careful. So yeah, but again, I just wasn't sure if I made the right call with my deployment or not. I think I was too focused on trying to get range damage through, where I missed some close combat opportunities. And so there's actually a moment in the very first turn when my opponent moved all of his units up. I didn't see it at the time. However, it was only after the fact, when I started my movement phase, I realized my Furies could have actually charged his mage. I'm not sure how much they actually do, to be honest. They're strength 5 on the charge, but he would have had to 4 up against me. But the point with that, the point with that move would have been to lock his mage down so he's -1 turn, no damage spells coming back on me. So that way I can focus everything on the dragon, or everything on setting up my close combat potential. So I think that move actually might have really set me back a turn, not charging the Furies into his mage, because they were the Furies. Yeah, they're advanced 10, so they easily could have gotten into that mage. I love the engine zoning ability with the divining snout. My opponent just had to be very, very cautious of giving me a charge with an engine and something else. In hindsight, maybe a bit too cautious, just because, you never know. They're only strength 4, but it's strength 4, 3d3 impact hits. So, that's something you still have to be cautious of. I'm still learning how to play the miser and the courtesan together, on how to utilize their strengths together to maximize my damage potential, but also to give myself close combat abilities, on when to be aggressive, on which unit to be aggressive with. For example, sometimes I'm wondering if I'm too conservative with the miser and just saying I can just push him in a way where push him into my opponent's lines in a way where my opponent just has to deal with him, but doesn't really have a good option in terms of dealing with him because he's so resilient. As long as I'm not giving up flanks or rears or counter charges that give my opponent a lot of static combat res, things like that. And then, still, this constant lesson I keep learning. Rules. No, not just mine, but your opponent's, because, again, not sure about the initiate getting the D6 thunder stomps, or just a single stomp. It's a large cavalry, so I think it could be D3 stomps. I don't know. I think it's maybe 1 stomp if it's just a large cavalry. So, I think the Succubi were still probably dead regardless, because they would have had the Ryma Knights coming in and a Phoenix coming in, so I don't think that would have changed much, but who knows. And then, I think my opponent's list does channel 3 in this matchup, or channel 3 plus 2 in this matchup. But, again, like I said, maybe there's a cap on meeting of minds on how many times you can channel with that rule. I'm not sure. But that's what the comment section is for. Micro stuff. Charging the mage with the Furies. The movement mistake with the engine allowing the charge from the 2 units of Silver Helms. Even though it did bring the objective closer to me, it still was a mistake that I could have easily avoided. I think choosing my targets could have been better. I could have, instead of switching between the mage and the dragon, just saying, I'm going to focus on this one model until it's dead, then move to the next one. Misplayed my fiends. They were in the wrong combats. At this rate, they really should have been going after the big monsters with their build. So, and they got outground from the dragon princes. Now I know. And those damn breath weapons kicked my butt. So, with that being said, those are my thoughts. So, thank you so much for watching. Thanks, everyone, one more time. So that is the 8th round of the Berlin Liga done. I have one more game. And yes, I'm hoping to make a finale and conclusion video about my time at the Berlin Liga. And stuff I learned, stuff that I can improve upon, stuff that I really liked, units that I really liked, etc. with Demon Legions, because this is a new book for me. But yeah, thanks again to my opponent, and I'm excited to catch you on the next one. Ciao, ciao for now.